Welcome to Edupedia World Grade 10 Computer Science Video Lecture Series. I'm Upeka Vandibona, and from this episode we are going to talk about the compile time errors in C++. When you are writing programs, your compiler is your first line of defense against errors. Before generating the object code, the compiler analyzes the code to detect syntax errors and type errors. If it finds that the program completely conforms to the language specification, it will allow you to proceed. Many of the errors that the compiler finds are simply silly errors caused by mistyping or incomplete edits of the source code, and others result from flaws in your understanding of the way the parts of your program interact. At the end of this episode, you will come to appreciate the compiler's ability to detect problems that would otherwise have caused you hours of tedious searching for bugs. Okay, now all through this episode we are using this function of calculating area of a rectangle. According to this function definition, it returns an int value and takes two int values as arguments. The first argument consider as the length and the second argument consider as the width. So now let's move into syntax errors. Good. Now you already know how to call a function. We discussed about that in a previous episode. Now tell me, what are the errors that you see in these code lines? Each of them trying to call the area function, and all of them contains syntax errors. That is, they are not well formed according to the C++ grammar. As a result, the compiler will reject them. Unfortunately, syntax errors are not always easy to report in a way that you, the programmer, find easy to understand. That's because the compiler may have to read a bit further than the error to be sure that there really is an error. The effect of this is that the reporting is often cryptic and occasionally refers to a line further on in the program. So for syntax errors, if you don't see anything wrong with the line the compiler points to, always look at the previous lines in the program. Okay, now did you find out the errors in these code lines? In the first code line, the ending parenthesis is missing. In the second code line, the statement termination symbol, the semicolon, is missing. In the third code line, for the data type int, rather than capital I, it should be simple I. Note that the compiler has no idea what you are trying to do, so it cannot report errors in terms of your intent, only in terms of what you did. So for the error message for this will not tell you what I told you, simple I rather than capital I thing. It will only tells you such kind of a int is not in there. So until you get used to them, you will feel such messages tend to be cryptic. Different compilers can give very different looking error messages for the same code, but no one will tell you something like what I told you, simple I rather than capital I. Fortunately, you soon get used to reading such stuff. And the syntax error in the fourth code line is the ending single quotation of the character argument. Good. Now these are called syntax errors. And apart from these errors, still there are many errors in these code lines. For example, count the number of arguments. In the function definition, there were two parameters, but in here we are passing only a one parameter. This is an error, but it is not a syntax error. Then what kind of an error is it? Let's see. Once you have removed syntax errors, the compiler will start reporting type errors. That is, it will report mismatches between the types you declared or forget to declare for your variables, functions, etc. and the types of values or expressions you assign to them, pass as functions, arguments, etc. Take a look at these code lines. There are no syntax errors, but there are type errors. Can you identify what type errors are in here? Let's take the first one. Here it is trying to call a function named arena, but our function is area. So here we misspell the area as arena. So the compiler thinks we want to call a function called arena rather than area. That's what we have said, not the area but the arena. As there is no function called arena, you will get an error message complaining about an undeclared function. If there is a function called arena and if that function accepts 7 as an argument, you have a worse problem. The program will compile but do something you didn't expect to it. Anyway, that is called logical error. But we don't get any logical error because we don't have a function called arena, therefore we only get a type error. Now the second code line. Here we are trying to call the function area with only a one argument. The compiler detects the wrong number of arguments. In C++, every function call must provide the expected number of arguments of the right type and in the right order. When the type system is used appropriately, this can be a powerful tool for avoiding runtime errors. Now the third code line. There we are trying to call the function area passing two arguments, but the first one is in string type. You might hope that the computer would look at the string 7 and figure out that you meant the integer 7. Actually, it won't. If a function needs an integer, you can't give it a string. C++ does support some implicit type conversions, but not string to int. The compiler does not try to guess what you meant. Good. Now we have covered up the two types of compile time errors, syntax errors and type errors. Now we are talking about something else called non-errors. Take a look at these code lines. These code lines are perfect, no syntax errors, no type errors. They are perfect, but there is something wrong with them. Let's see what are they. The first code line. For the variable x4, we get no error message from the compiler. From the compiler's point of view, calling the area function by passing the two arguments 10 and -7 is fine. The area function asks for two integers and you gave them to it. Nobody said that those arguments had to be positive. But for your human mind, you know -7 can't be a width. There is no meaning in it. Now the second code line. Here we are passing double arguments rather than int argument. But anyway, we can convert double to int. Therefore, the C++ compiler would allow this function call. But in the conversion process, these double values would be truncated. 10.7 would be truncated into 10 and 9.3 would be truncated into 9. And at the end, you will not get an accurate area of the rectangle. Now the third code line. The initialization of the variable x6 suffers from a variant of the same problem as in the second code line. The int value returned by the area function will assign to a char. The most likely result is for the variable x6 to get the truncated value. As you gain experience, you will learn how to get the most out of the compiler's ability to detect errors and to dodge its known weaknesses. However, don't get overconfident. My program compiled doesn't mean that it will run. Even if it does run, it typically gives wrong results until you find the flaws in your logic. And with that, we are going to end up this episode. From this episode, we discussed about two types of compile time errors, syntax errors and type errors. From the next episode, we are going to discuss about linked time and runtime errors in C++. Thank you for watching and stay tuned on with Edupedia World.